The names Bruce Ellington and Rex Burkhead are buzzing around daily fantasy circles this week. We'll talk about whether they're viable cash game plays. And stop the presses. Devin wants to say something positive about a Browns player. But before we dive into those positional takes, I'm going to let John walk us through the Vegas lines. John, what is Vegas telling us in Week 11?
We've got a lot of line movement early in the week. I did the Vegas value chart on Monday night, and as we're recording this on Thursday night, a lot of movement this week. You see this game being played in Mexico City this week, New England, Oakland. Don't be fooled when you see that Oakland is the home team. Obviously, neither is. It's one of the higher game totals on the year at 54.5 points, with New England at 6.5-point favorite. That casts them with a 30.5 points implied team total. You're going to be looking at a lot of the New England Patriots this week, and we'll definitely walk through those as we go through the episode. Next in line, the New Orleans Saints, red hot. They're a rush team now. If we didn't pick this up, lots and lots of rushing touchdowns last week as they destroyed the Buffalo Bills. And they're 8-point home favorites this week with a 29.5 implied point total against the Washington Redskins. So we're definitely going to be talking about Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara and whether or not their price has gone too high or if they're still in play as DFS tournament options this week. And then, going down the list, you got Kansas City over the Giants. The Giants haven't beat anybody this year. And a little bit further down, I think a game that's really interesting is the Minnesota Vikings and the LA Rams. Looking at it, you say, here's two defenses that are pretty good, if not very good, and yet Vegas has pinned them with a 46 points total in that game. I think there's some sneaky upside, and I suspect that we'll get into that as the power grid moves on.
Yeah, the Giants did beat one team, which was the Broncos, in that one game.
Monday night, yep.
But they look like a team who's not going to beat anybody else for sure.
Kansas City's defense isn't very good, though. That game surprises me that it's only a 46 total. You have two of both teams are bottom 7 as far as yards giving up for rushing and passing. So neither team can really stop anybody or shown any really defense. I mean, Kansas City has Marcus Peters, which we'll get into, but outside of that, they're really struggling at corner. So we'll get into the Giants in a little bit, but there's some players that I like on that team.
Yeah, for sure. And I saw that someone put some weather concerns on the show sheet. Jeff, was that you?
That was me.
Walk us through that a little bit. And obviously we don't know what the weather's going to be this far in advance, but what are the games you're keeping your eye on here?
Right. I think that we got some wind possibilities at both Cleveland and also at the former Meadowlands, MetLife Stadium. I always call it the Meadowlands up in Jersey, but they're saying 17-mile-an-hour winds, which is right on that borderline of being relevant. So if it gets windier, that I can see why the total is a little bit down. As far as John hit on most games I was looking at, but there's two games I wanted to touch on real quick. 2-point spreads I think are off. I think that the New Orleans-Washington total is too high. I really like the Saints defense a lot. I don't trust the Washington offense. They just lost their running back. I think that game's going to be a lot lower than expected. And one game some of you may not be on, but I think that the Tampa Bay-Miami game is going to score a lot of points. I think both defenses are terrible. And I think that total, I think it was in the 40s, if I'm not mistaken. It was 40.5. That's way too low. I see both teams getting 24 points in that game.
Yeah, they bumped it up a point today to 41.5, but that's still pretty low for two teams with terrible defenses. Let's move right into some quarterbacks and get people's picks, your cash game picks, your GPP picks. Ryan, talk to me. Who do you like at quarterback this week?
I think the cash games, you kind of need to just start with Alex Smith and see where it goes. If you have more money, maybe move up to Tom Brady. If you don't have more money, pick whoever Devin's going to pick because he disagrees with me.
No, I said no on Smith and yes on Brady.
Okay, fair enough. New York, we'll talk about it. I'm sure John has some notes, but they seem to have just given up, right? So there's the Chiefs are going to score points, and Smith usually is the engine that drives it. I do like some guys that are cheaper. And so if you're playing, in DraftKings specifically, every week we talk about that's the site where you want to buy down at quarterback because of tighter pricing. It may not be cash game. We might be blurring the lines here, but I kind of like Blaine Gabbert as well at Houston. So we've got, Arizona visiting Houston. It'll be Gabbert's first start. sometimes with cheap quarterbacks, we look for athleticism and guys that have a little bit of a rushing floor. Blaine Gabbert has that. He took off a lot last year as the quarterback of San Francisco. And in the last 3 games, Houston has allowed the QB1, Russell Wilson, the QB8, Jacoby Brissett, who when has he ever been QB8, and the QB3 to Jared Goff. So they are getting crushed via the pass. And, we know Bruce Arians likes to pass, and he had some very kind words to say about Blaine Gabbert this week. So if you're looking to buy down and then jam in, a lot of high-value guys at positions where touches are a premium, that's probably the route that I would go.
Yeah, and then Blaine Gabbert's going to be starting over Drew Stanton this week, it sounds like. And so that is a place you could look for value, like you said on DraftKings, where you're just about every week looking for value. The other quarterback switch we have this week is Tyrod Taylor was benched for guiding the Buffalo Bills to a winning record, and bringing in Nathan Peterman this week. Now, I'm not necessarily recommending Peterman, but maybe Devin has some insight. Devin Knotts works with a couple of our other staffers on our matchups columns each week. Devin, is there something you're seeing in this matchup that makes you interested in Peterman?
I think it's interesting, not for DFS purposes, but I think we'll get into team defenses in a little bit, and the Chargers are by far the chalk play this week. But I don't think Peterman's as bad as what a lot of people think. So I went back and watched all of his preseason games. Basically every play he was doing a 3 or 5 step drop in releasing the ball. So the Bills have had a significant amount of sacks. I think they have 30 sacks on the year. And Tyrod Taylor, as good as he is as a runner, he runs himself into some sacks. So if they're releasing the ball as quickly as they did in the preseason with Peterman, look, they're a winning football team. They're still in playoff contention. I don't think this is as bad of a quarterback as people will look at.
Yeah, so maybe that impacts your exposure to certain defenses. John, who are you looking at quarterback? How about some GPP plays?
One GPP play I think is in play this week, and everybody's going to hate it, and that's why he's a GPP play, is Ryan Fitzpatrick against Miami. Last week he killed a lot of rosters, and he was chalk. He didn't do a whole lot, but we saw on Monday night what Cam Newton did against them, throwing up 4 touchdowns, making it look easy. Entering that game, the Miami Dolphins had the 28th DVOA pass defense. They did not look any better that night, and now they're coming off of a short week of preparation to play Tampa Bay. I think he's in a good spot, and we get Mike Evans back this week. They're not very good, the Dolphins, that is. They're not very good at defending the tight end position. There's a whole lot of areas that Fitzpatrick could attack them, and I think he'll go under-owned because of recency bias.
The problem is he's so bad at football. Like he's not good. I mean, we've seen it before. It's like he hasn't been good in several years. I don't know.
I will say, if you can get away with being bad at football in one position for fantasy, it's quarterback.
Yeah, let's look at the projections on our site. The consensus projections on our site have him at 17 points, and he's $5,300. You basically need 4x out of your quarterbacks. If he slightly exceeds those expectations, he's going to reach that 4x value. And I think he's very stackable with a guy like Evans, who's in a great spot. I think he's very stackable with Cameron Brate as a kind of a leverage play against Kelce or Gronkowski, both of whom are in great spots this week, both of whom I'll have a lot of exposure to. But I think that Brate has 2 touchdown upside in this matchup, and he's going to go under-owned because of those other 2 in the matchups that they have.
I hear you. I guess I just like some other cheap guys a little bit better. So I like Keenum going up against the Rams. I think that game could shoot out. I also kind of like Tom Savage against Arizona. So this secondary has been relatively horrible, to say the least, outside of Patrick Peterson. The only concern I would have is that Savage continues to just throw to Peterson, even though he has other receivers on that team. So that's the only concern there. I think for me in cash games, as a person who primarily plays cash games, it starts and ends with Tom Brady, as we've already mentioned. But I just wanted to expand a little bit more on that. New England has been in Denver they're actually training at the Air Force Academy at 6,000 feet. Oakland is staying in Oakland until they go to New Mexico or go to Mexico City. Yeah. Oakland is at 40 feet. So if this game, 6,000 feet, Mexico City is at 7,500 feet altitude. That's a big deal to me, because spending 2 weeks at altitude, you can kind of adjust your body a little bit. where going from Oakland out to Mexico City, that could be an adjustment, especially late. If this game gets out of hand, Brady could have a huge day.
Do we really believe this, though? I mean, I get it. I understand. I mean, I'm a biologist. I understand all this. But, I mean, we never talk about altitude when we're talking about the Denver Broncos. Yet this is something that happens every week. Denver's coming off of altitude, or teams are going in there. We never talk about it outside of the Steelers a few years back, right, Ryan? Had sickle cell.
Former safety Ryan Clark.
There you go. Outside of that, I never remember talking about it. I think it's a very interesting thing to discuss from it's interesting because we don't talk about it often, but I'm not buying into it. I don't think it makes that big of a difference outside of the travel.
I guess the argument is if you looked at every time the Broncos played back-to-back home games, they were coming off of altitude and had 2 straight weeks of practice. It would be the study. I mean, I also think that we can eliminate the altitude and just say New England's really good at passing the ball and Oakland's not very good at stopping the pass. So that's a great reason to play Tom Brady as well. And I'm probably going to steal Jeff's thunder on the kicker analysis here, but Gostkowski will probably kick like a 78-yard field goal, right? Because it's 7,500 feet. So he puts the green
bonus points for that?
At least 5. So,
I think it stops at 50. Yeah.
So, but there's a little something to it. I mean, and also the time zone change. We always talk West Coast, East Coast, right? So if they had traveled back to New England and then gone back over, there could be some advantages gained by it. And plus, everything New England does is smart, right? So we need to adhere to that narrative too.
The Broncos have won 3 games at home. They haven't won a game on the road.
There you go.
I mean, I know it's a small sample size and there's other factors there, but I don't know. I think there's something to it. I've been to Denver a couple times, and not that I'm a professional athlete, but I have difficulty breathing, so I would imagine the human body is similar.
I have difficulty breathing, getting up into.
Did you just walk a flight of steps, or you mean in general?
I mean, I'm not a small guy, so.
I do me. Okay, so Jeff, we'll obviously get to more kicker talk later because Jeff Jeff Pasquino loves to play on all kinds of sites with all kinds of formats, and he's sort of our resident kicker expert. But we'll get to that later. Jeff, I want to hear a little bit more about who you like at quarterback this week.
Well, I'm definitely all behind Brady for cash, especially with the weather possibility for Alex Smith. Although he doesn't throw deep, I do think that everything leans towards New England. It's a better matchup. I think the pace of play is going to be up a lot for New England, and that's what they're probably practicing this week because they're going to push Oakland to not just against number of plays and altitude, but the difference between going to Denver and going to Mexico City is another 2,500 feet. It's significant. And they're going to be probably trying to run 80 offensive plays for New England just to gas the Raiders and have them completely dead in the second half. So I think this could be a 24-21 at halftime, and then New England it turns it into a rout in the second half. So I expect a lot of plays, a lot of passing, a lot of no huddle for New England. I'm all over Tom Brady this week. I think he's going to also work the short passing game to Rex Burkhead as well, who we'll get to later. I do like Alex Smith. I think it's a good matchup. I think the Giants have completely quit on defense. We have been talking about in the staff. Janoris Jenkins is a no-show for several weeks now. I know John's got some insight on that. We talked a lot of the GPPs I liked. I'll go back to, believe it or not, Jay Cutler is in the GPP discussion. I think that's a definite possibility. But the reason I'm looking at these guys, if I find 2 receivers or 2 targets on a team that are in favorable matchups, by default, I got to look at the quarterback. So that's how I wind up on Ryan Fitzpatrick. So another thing to look at is how you're going to beat a team. And Jacksonville, everybody's trying to figure out who the wide receiver is going to be and if the tight end is going to be involved because they think that they're not going to be able to run on Cleveland because they're a good defense. But if they're going to throw the ball a lot, God help you, but you got to look at Blake Bortles. It's a GPP play, but I know there's lots of shaking heads.
No, we won't do it.
I understand that.
Go UCF Knights.
I love the Jaguars this year. I love Blake Bortles. The problem is
I'm not a fan at all. I'm just saying that's the script to beat Cleveland. So if so, you got to look at the quarterback. I'm not a big fan of it, but it's a possibility.
The game has the lowest implied total of
the wind's 25 miles an hour.
It's going to keep going that way too.
Right.
The weather should be enough. Just use the weather as an excuse not to play him, Jeff. That'll keep you off of him.
All right.
The wind scares me more than the total.
Knock me off the Bortles cliff. Thank you. So
that's what the power grid's all about, helping friends not walk off that cliff.
There are a lot of good quarterbacks that are projected for 6% or less ownership, and quarterback is always low ownership because you only can use one on all the sites now. So Gabbert is definitely in play. I think that Jared Goff looks very low owned and makes a great play, as is Case Keenum. I think that's a great game stack on both. You can get both sides there. I think there's a lot of good GPP quarterbacks this week, but I think cash, again, to bring it full circle, is Brady or Alex Smith.
I think Jeff just named every quarterback on the slate.
not Joe Flacco.
Not every. What about Derek Carr for GPPs if that game really is going to be a shootout?
I think he's going to be fairly popular, actually.
Jeff just talked about multiple receiving weapons being viable, and there's always Cooper, Crabtree, and Cook, and so all roads lead back to the quarterback. So just saying. Now we've mentioned every quarterback.
Well, I want to mention two notes about quarterbacks we've already mentioned, which is I think that Minnesota Rams game is going to have a little bit faster pace than people might imagine because they imagine these two teams having good defenses. And on the flip side, the New Orleans-Washington game could have a slower pace because New Orleans has become this running team that runs at a slower pace. I think John brought up a lot of these points on our show last night. I just wanted to reiterate those really quickly because I think that they'll impact my interest in rostering a guy like Breeze in GPPs. I'm not as interested in him, even though he'll probably be low owned and he probably has that upside. I just don't see it with the way that the Saints are running their offense this year.
One more thing on altitude, the Broncos have the highest winning percentage at home of any team in the NFL.
Maybe the fans are loud.
So yeah, I believe that's true. There's no doubt. I used to live in Colorado Springs when I was in the military, so I know that this is a true phenomenon. I just don't buy into the premise that the New England Patriots are going to go there for 2 weeks and all of a sudden become climatized because of their hemoglobin levels going up. And, I'm not going to get into this into a fantasy football show, but believe me, it's not that much of an advantage for them to stay there outside of the obvious, that being the time zone and the travel. I think that's the biggest thing for them.
When we start talking about hemoglobin, that means it's time to move on to running backs.
Yeah. The Power Grid Week 11 hemoglobin levels.
Hemoglobin. We chatted about Jared Goff, Tom Brady, and hemoglobin. So let's talk about running backs. There's some injuries here that we're keeping our eye on. It looks like both of the top Green Bay running backs could be out of this game. Aaron Jones is going to miss. Ty Montgomery looks doubtful. He didn't practice on Thursday, so Jamal Williams is maybe a volume play, but not a very appealing one. Rob Kelly is out for the Washington Redskins, and then Jeremy Hill is also on IR. Maybe that means we take a closer look at Joe Mixon. And then it looks like Danny Woodhead and Terrence West may be back this week just to, put a four-headed monster on a backfield that's already kind of a mess and not that appealing. And then if you're playing Sunday Night Football on FanDuel, keep an eye on the fact that Dallas is going to be without a couple of key players. Sean Lee, the linebacker, is going to be out for that game. And then also they've ruled out Tyron Smith, the left tackle, on the offensive line for Dallas. So Dallas is a bit banged up going into Sunday Night Football. Let's talk running backs. Devin, I want to pitch it to you first. Tell me about the running backs you like this week.
Yeah, I think it starts with Kareem Hunt, which is kind of a dilemma because he's only averaging 47 yards per game over his last 4 games and hasn't scored a touchdown in 6 games. But he's going against this Giants defense that, outside of their defensive tackles and Damon Harrison, Snacks, and Dalvin Tomlinson, there's not much to like on this defense. So the Giants are allowing the 3rd most rushing yards to opponents with 133 yards a game. They've allowed several big plays. They allowed three carries last week over 20 yards. So that kind of has me on Hunt as my top guy. The other guy I really like this week, believe it or not, is in the same game. It's Orleans Darkwa. So Orleans Darkwa has 70 yards or more in back-to-back games. And this Chiefs rushing defense is allowing 131 yards per game to opponents and 155 yards over their last 3 games. So they made some changes at defensive tackle, but that really hasn't helped much. So this game could, as much as we talk about Alex Smith, this game could be won on the ground for both teams. The only worry about Darkwa is if they get behind early, they'll be they'll be throwing the ball, and I like everybody in this game.
Yeah, and I think that Kansas City's rush defense, if you look at their numbers, is definitely torpedoed as the season has gone on. They started way stronger than they've looked as of late. Jeff, tell us about the running backs you have your eye on.
I think running back's probably one of the more difficult positions this week. There's a lot of cognitive bias because everybody bit us last week, and there's so many running backs that just didn't show up, and it's tough. I mean, you want to go to the well. I'm looking mostly at Melvin Gordon, but I feel like I got a little bit snake bit with Eckler getting involved last week. But it's just lined up really well. You got Phil. We didn't talk about Phillip Rivers as a quarterback. We didn't mention, but he's coming out of the concussion protocol, and I think that we're going to be leaning hard on Melvin Gordon this week. It's a great matchup for him against Buffalo. I think that's probably my top guy this week. I like both Saints running backs. I think so a lot of cheaper pass-catching running backs are definitely in play, and that always brings up DraftKings and full PPR sites. So you got Chris Thompson, Kenyon Drake, both guys in Minnesota, especially McKinnon and Rex Burkhead. But on FanDuel, you wonder, are these guys really in play? And you got to look at the price. And right now I'm kind of looking at Melvin Gordon and Chris Thompson fitting in kind of nicely just because I think Washington's going to be behind. They don't have many receivers, so they're going to be dumping the ball off to him. And, with one less running back to feed, I think that Thompson's going to see a lot of –
You're not talking cash, are you?
I'm thinking about it. Yes, I'm thinking about it.
I'm not on the cash play with Thompson. I love him as a GPP play, but
his floor is just too low. I mean, we've seen games where he just gets two or 3 points. That's the problem. I think he's more – I like him as a GPP play.
Yeah, it's a discussion point. I actually don't disagree with you, Devin, but as a discussion point, is it worth pointing out that Rob Kelly being off, does that just by proxy provide more opportunity for Chris Thompson in this situation?
Does it?
I don't know. I'm asking.
I don't think it – I think that they're completely separate roles.
So Samaje Perine will get 20 touches, 16 to 20 touches this game?
Who was the other back that they brought in when Kelly was hurt? They brought in another guy. It was Mac Brown, I think. Is he still on the team?
Right. I don't know.
They did bring in another back to complement Perine in that role it was like a Sunday night game earlier in the season. So that's the concern I have is that
it was Mac Brown had 10 snaps and 4 snaps. He has 14 snaps on the season. So I don't think that that's the worry.
Okay.
I think the San Francisco game earlier in week 6, Washington was at home. They were heavily favored. Kelly didn't play. Perine had 9 carries, 23 yards, 3 catches, 24 yards, and a touchdown. Thompson got 16 carries. He only got 33 yards, but he had 4 for 105 receiving in a game that they were, supposed to dominate. Granted, didn't, but he had 20 touches. Perine had 12. So in a game where it's going to be neutral or they're going to be behind on the road, I'm not sure I'd be willing to bet a whole lot that Perine gets more touches than Thompson.
But let's just play this out. So Chris Thompson in cash, whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel, let's just use DraftKings. He's 5,400. Joe Mixon's 4,000. Lamar Miller's 5,000.
Yep, I have a Joe Mixon. I like Joe Mixon too. So in a vacuum, against Perine, he's the play. But there are other cheaper guys that I agree.
The problem is he can wreck your lineup with a 4 or 5 point outing, and you're spent $5,400 for 1x.
I think he's getting 10 points, and that's only 2x. But I think.
But his floor is 5 points.
I don't think so.
Here's my other thing, John. You said, is Perine going to get 20 touches in this game?
No.
Perine and Kelly have only combined for 20 touches twice this year in 4 Washington wins, and they're not going to have a favorable game script here. I think Perine could get like 14 or 15 touches and kind of soak up all the work that both Perine and Kelly would have gotten, and then that still just leaves Thompson with his usual like 11 or 12 touches. The question is, are those touches going to be highly efficient as they have been in Chris Thompson's early season, whereas he's only scored 1 touchdown in the last 6 games. So I don't feel comfortable in cash with him.
Here's one thing, the point I was trying to make when I was doing my build was that my running back 2 slot on FanDuel was probably my last spot that I was plugging in. I wanted Tom Brady. I wanted Melvin Gordon. I had wide receivers and tight ends I liked. Kicker and defense I liked as well. And then running back 2, I was just looking for a cheap guy to fit in. So I think there's options to go there. I think you are going to pay down at running back 2 on FanDuel. On DraftKings, yes, it's a different build. But I think that's the way I'm looking at the construction this week. I don't think you're paying up for 2 running backs this week on FanDuel.
I think there's so many cheap wide receivers that are in pretty good spots that I think you can.
I'm paying up for 2 right now by paying down at wide receiver. I'm with Devin on that. But the Rex Burkhead play, he's a cash play for me only on DraftKings. His price is very favorable on DraftKings. 5,700 is too much on FanDuel, so he's sort of out of cash game consideration for me.
He's like RB 25 on FanDuel and something around 50 on DraftKings.
Yeah. Now, Ryan, you mentioned Joe Mixon, and I think you got other running back picks. Yeah, what do you got?
Yeah, so people are scared of Denver because you think of the last couple of years, but let's think of the last couple of weeks, right? So Lewis and Burkhead combined for 24 carries, 91 yards, and a touchdown. And then if you want to talk about pass-catching running backs, Burkhead and James White combined for 6 catches, 38 yards, and 2 touchdowns in a script where New England was winning the entire game. And then we go back another week, and Philly running backs combined for 165 yards and 3 touchdowns. So the Denver defense has not been very good of late. They have a ton of talent, but in a way, there's got to be a sort of back-of-mind thought that, hey, this offense can't score for us, so what are we really doing? And I think that showed up when they gave up 50 points to Philly. No way a defense with that talent should ever give up 50 points. And it has just continued. So their last 21 drives, they've given up 11 touchdowns and 3 field goals. And one of those drives was a kneel down. So they have 6 stops in their last 21 drives. Now, since he's not world beaters on offense, but Mixon's only 4K and the touches are going to be there. So, he may tack on 3 catches. We saw him a couple weeks ago have I think it was 3-4 catches for 90 yards. The rushing volume is a little scary because he's still only getting 13 carries, 15 carries max. But I mean, I think 15 touches are in line, and I think it's a defense that just isn't doing very well of late. So for 4K, might be better than Chris Thompson.
In terms of value.
Yes.
There's 3 guys that we haven't mentioned, Leonard Fournette, Todd Gurley, and LeSean McCoy. People got burned by some of these top-end running backs. Let's see the black-eyed Joes here. Any of these guys even in consideration for cash games at all? Okay, I see some guys saying yes for cash games. Okay, let's take a closer look at some of these guys, and we'll try to go quickly because we want to move on to wide receivers. Jeff, what do you like?
I think it's Gurley. I think Gurley's the guy. Fournette is up against Cleveland. They got a bad running defense, or a great running defense. They're not going to run on them. And I don't trust. I already forgotten because I didn't care.
LeSean McCoy against the Chargers.
McCoy against the Chargers, but he's going to be the entire offense. So they're going to stack 11 in the box. So I don't trust that either. So I think Gurley's the guy.
Minnesota's been pretty tough against the run, though. That's the concern.
Not versus. Receiving running backs though, and Gurley's that guy.
Yeah, I could see. I'm kind of ignoring McCoy, but I could see Gurley and Fournette.
Why are we ignoring McCoy?
Because you're higher on the quarterback switch here than I am. I think that the quarterback switch is going to impair their whole offense.
But let's say he's horrible, right? Is McCoy? How much does that actually hurt McCoy? We've seen. Leonard Fournette's had great games with Blake Bortles. I don't think it hurt. To look at Todd Gurley 2 years ago when he had, I don't even remember who his quarterback was, but with the Rams a couple years ago, but it was not good. Was it
Case Keenum?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of Keenum and
Sam Bradford, maybe?
No, it was the Eagles quarterback. The Eagles quarterback that they signed.
Nick Foles.
Nick Foles.
Yeah.
So, I guess what I'm saying is if McCoy's ownership is going to be dropping because of Peterman, I think they're going to hand him the ball just as much, if not more, than what they've done. And the Chargers defense hasn't been great against the run. Yeah,
I know, Devin. We talk about the Chargers defense every week because they haven't been, but they're getting better.
They're getting better, yeah.
They to Oakland, they gave up 63 yards to Lynch. To Denver, they gave up 44 yards to C.J. Anderson. New England, they gave up 44 to Lewis and 34 to Gillislee. These aren't massive numbers, and there's really only been one rushing touchdown by a running back in the last 4 games. the trend is kind of changing. As bad as they were in the beginning of the year, I don't know what it is. You write the matchups, maybe you know, but they're improving. It's not egregious like it was earlier in the year.
So. It's not a slam dunk matchup, but it's still one that if everyone's going to be scared off of McCoy, and we talk about ownership and we talk about game theory all the time.
If you're talking tournaments,
what if Peterman's not as bad as what we think he is? I mean, there's a reason Sean McDermott went to him in the playoff run, right? I mean,
he's a volume-based play this week. I mean, you look at this on the perimeter. You've got two cornerbacks in Casey Hayward and was it Trevor Williams, I believe, on the other side. These guys are top 10 cornerbacks in the entire league on Pro Football Focus, and so they're shutting down the perimeter. That only leaves things in the middle. And, Joey Bosa is great, but he's a pass rusher, and, they're going to give the ball to LeSean McCoy. He's going to get 25 touches. And just on volume alone, I don't care how bad the matchup is, on volume alone, he should be in your discussion for both cash and for GPPs this week. I'm not saying that I'll have him in my cash games, but I think that he's certainly in contention on a point per dollar basis.
And if you want to check out one of our great articles over at Football Guys, Ryan Hester, he has his trend spotting article, and it talks kind of about the funnel defense and the runnel defense, some interesting statistics that he's posted in his article this week. We got to move on to
20 seconds. I have to mention Duke Johnson.
Okay. Oh, yes.
All right.
You're going to talk positively about a Brown. Tell us,
yes.
Devin.
Real quick, I promise. So this is probably the longest that I'll talk about a Brown all season, besides the Browns defense last week.
All 20 seconds.
All right. Duke Johnson in bad weather, going up. The Browns are going up against this elite Jacksonville Jaguar secondary. The rushing defense with Marcel Darius has been phenomenal since they've added him, and Telvin Smith has been playing very well as well. How else are they going to move the ball? That's the question that I ask myself. So they're going to move the ball by short dump-off passes to Duke Johnson. He's had games where he's had 9 receptions in a game. This is a game where he has 7-8 reception upside. Not in cash, absolutely not. But on DraftKings, in PPR sites, he could have 9 catches for 60 yards, and that's more than reaching value.
Yeah. And John loves that play. For those of you who have never seen the show or are listening on audio, we hold up these green and red Black-Eyed Joe signs. And when someone likes a pick, they hold up the green sign to say, I love this. Or they hold up the red sign to say, like, I disagree, come talk to me. And so John vehemently held up the green sign on the Duke Johnson pick. We're going to move on to wide receivers, but don't sleep on Jay Ajayi on Sunday Night Football if you're playing the FanDuel main slate, especially in GPPs. I think
Sean Lee's out.
No, I'm with that.
He likes
I'm just
that.
Perturbed by that pick. As a Cowboys fan, I don't want to like it, but I think it's a great call.
I said Sean Lee, not John Lee.
Sean Lee, not John Lee. Yeah,
I thought because I didn't hold up the green Black-Eyed Joe. I thought you said John Lee's out.
No, John Lee picked that a long time ago.
Yeah. Sean Lee, middle linebacker, not John Lee, fantasy analyst.
Yeah, but John Lee is begrudgingly agreeing. We got greens all around on Jay Ajayi. Let's talk wide receivers. We're having fun talking about all this stuff this week. I love it. All right. So Will Fuller is out. So Bruce Ellington is a name we need to talk about. Allen Hurns is out. So we might or might not look at Jacksonville receivers based on that weather. Chris Hogan did not practice on Thursday. So maybe that changes the New England landscape a little bit. Well, keep an eye on Alshon Jeffrey. He had limited practice today. I think he's going to be fine for the game, but just keep an eye on him. And John Brown for the Arizona Cardinals does not look like he's going to go. Didn't practice Thursday. Not that it matters a ton, but keep an eye on that if you care.
He was a nice GPP play if he could play.
Yeah, kind of a dart. Well, Ryan, tell me, since he's off the table for you, tell me about some other receivers you're shifting to.
Well, completely from dart to guy I would confidently put into a lineup. Michael Thomas from New Orleans. I mean, the volume has just been undeniable lately. Guy hasn't scored touchdowns, but the guy he's a 6 reception floor. He's seems like a 10 target floor. We have a New Orleans team that formerly used to pass the ball 40 times a game, and now they're quote unquote a running team. but the way they distribute their targets this year is way different than before. I mean, we don't have Devery Henderson running deep balls and getting 3 or 4 targets in any given week and having the New Orleans target distribution be unpredictable. Michael Thomas is getting his targets, and he's getting his catches, and he's getting his production. So he's a cash game guy that I like. I also like Tyreek Hill in the Chiefs and Giants game. I mean, weather pending, of course, since he's a deep ball profile guy. We don't want to take a deep ball receiver in a 20-mile-an-hour wind game. But the Giants secondary has given up. They've had 2 corners suspended for disagreeing and arguing with their coach in the last month, so they're not real happy. And unhappy corners tend to not really cover players really well. So that there's some good analysis for everybody. So Tyreek Hill is another player that I like in cash or GPP formats. So I'm sure there's more that the other guys want to talk about. So we'll let them take the mic here. But yeah, those are the guys I'm going with.
Speaking of unhappy, I like getting Ryan to go first because then everyone just like piles on top of him. Like John Lee saying he doesn't like the Michael Thomas pick. Tell me what's going on, right? Like we piled on the CJ Beathard pick last week. I don't remember who made that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Michael Thomas, I won't disagree that he's been heavily targeted, but this game sets up as a high running game again for New Orleans. So you've got that, and then you can't dismiss this the secondary in Washington. Of course, Josh Norman plays on one side. He's not a shadow cornerback. But on the other side, Bashaud Breeland's been pretty darn good this season. They've got 2 guys on the outside that are going to be seeing Michael Thomas on probably 80% of his routes. And I think that probably creates some problems for me in cash games when he represents one of the highest priced guys. I'm looking now. I'm seeing Mike Evans is higher than him. And outside of that, I mean, he's like the 2nd or 3rd highest priced guy on the board. And I think there's serious questions about game script and personnel matchups. So for me, I got to come off of him. I'm looking at other guys like Larry Fitzgerald, for example. If Blaine Gabbert is quarterback and it looks like he's going to be, I think he's going to pepper him with the ball. I mean, first off, there's a matchup you want. He's going up against Kareem Jackson, one of the worst statistically worst cornerbacks in the league this season out of the slot position. He's a nickel corner. And last year, if you look at when Blaine Gabbert was the starting quarterback for the 49ers, he absolutely peppered that slot receiver. So I think he's in a perfect position at 6,900 on DraftKings. And I'm looking on the fly, 6,900 on both sites this week. As a GPP flyer, I think Marvin Jones is a guy we should be looking at this week. Marvin Jones going up against Kyle Fuller. Kyle Fuller, 3rd most yards allowed in coverage this season for the Chicago Bears. And Marvin Jones, before he laid a clunker last week against Devin's esteemed Cleveland Browns.
He killed me last week.
Esteemed? Really?
Yeah. Before he did that, the previous 3 weeks, he had 36 targets. 36 targets over the previous 3 weeks, 2 targets last week. I think recency bias will cause his ownership to drop. And that matchup against Kyle Fuller cannot be dismissed. I think he's an excellent GPP play this week.
Devin, what do you think about that? And do you have other receiver picks?
Marvin Jones destroyed me last week. I haven't been that wrong on a player in a long time, but so apologies to everyone out there. A couple guys that are –
me included.
Yeah, sorry, everybody. A couple guys I really like this week. I kind of like Jamison Crowder at 4K on DraftKings. He's actually seen a significant amount of volume recently. He's had 11 targets last game and 13 targets the game before, averaging about 100 yards in each of those games. So at 4K, if he can get 5 or 6 catches and get close to 80, 90 yards, it's pretty good. Couple other cheap guys. We mentioned Bruce Ellington. I like Bruce Ellington, but I also like, believe it or not, I also like DeAndre Hopkins against Patrick Peterson. So at 6,100 on DraftKings, it's simply too cheap for a guy who's going to see that much volume. I know the matchup's hard. I get it. But as good as Peterson is, I think Hopkins is just as good. Some of the catches that he makes are absolutely just ridiculous at times. So I think at 6,100, a lot of people are just going to scroll right by him because they're going to be like, nope, not playing against Peterson. I have a sneaky suspicion that he has upside for GPPs. Ellington's a receiver I want in that game in cash. The last cash game player that I like this week is D.D. Westbrook. D.D. Westbrook is a fourth-round receiver for those that don't know. The only reason he went in the fourth round was for some off-the-field issues. It's his first game back going up against Cleveland, and these teams have been jarring words, basically going back and forth at each other based on a safety on the Jaguars to Sean Gibson, who basically called the Browns out for letting him go. Westbrook basically said he's going to get 200 yards this week. I don't believe he's going to get 200 yards, but he's extremely cheap. And I think he's been running with the first-team offense for the last 3 weeks. This is a guy who I really like this week.
It'll be interesting to see what kind of play volume he has, because there was some rumor that he was going to be eased in, and then he's like, I'm going to get 200 yards. So maybe that's all coach speak. It's tough to tell.
If you're a coach, wouldn't you say he's eased in if he's a big part of your offense? I mean, he's been running with the first team for the last 3 weeks. Didn't
we just debate whether Blake Bortles was cash viable? Is he going to get 200 yards passing? I mean, I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Like, are we really doing this with Jacksonville?
I think he gets 200 yards.
But Devin McCourty aside, I mean, if you're Devin McCourty aside, right, we have to acknowledge that. He's a great corner. If we're playing a Jacksonville receiver, is it not Marquise Lee? And also, aren't there reports coming out that Keelan Cole is running in 2 wide sets and D.D. Westbrook's running in 3 wide sets? And all of this assumes that Cleveland can kind of score and maybe not let Jacksonville only pass 20 times in this game. So
I trust Westbrook. I trust Westbrook's talent over Cole.
I agree, but what if Cole plays more? Sometimes talent doesn't matter as much as volume.
For a home run hitting receiver, you don't need to be on the field that often. I mean,
I don't disagree with you, but are we really going home run hitting receiver on the Jacksonville Jaguars? That in a game with 20 miles an hour wind, as we keep talking about it, that's all.
And he's not 3,000; he's 3,800. I think that makes a difference as well.
Bruce Ellington is 3,000.
Westbrook is 3,600.
Okay,
Devin, you've seen him play more than I have. Is he more a slant and go guy, or is he a home run 40-yard bomb guy?
I mean, he is a yards after the catch type receiver.
Yeah, okay.
No, he's a guy who he's as Tyreek. I mean, he's not Tyreek Hill fast. He's Tyreek Hill electric. When you get the ball, I mean, this is a guy who was in the Heisman race for a while. This is a guy who's very, very talented. He would have been a top 20 pick if he didn't have the off the field issues before the draft.
Yeah, no concern on the talent. I'm just saying, if we can talk 20 minutes ago about not wanting to play Blake Bortles confidently, can we talk about his second/third receiver confidently in a high wind game?
Don't put me back on the edge, Ryan.
That's all I'm saying.
Let's keep going, guys. I think all good points all around.
I also, if I could rebut the Larry Fitzgerald situation too, since 2015 on the road, Larry Fitzgerald averages 4 fewer PPR points per game than he does at home. So there's that, right? So that's another thing. Splits do happen, but I don't know.
Blaine Gabbert overcomes all evils.
Right. And I'm the guy that said Blaine Gabbert too. So that's fair.
Bad quarterbacks have a tendency to lock on to one receiver. That's all I'll say.
All right, so I'm going to throw a couple more quick names out, and we're going to move on. I'm also considering on FanDuel Sterling Shepard as a potential cash play. I'm also looking at on DraftKings. Amari Cooper's price is very low at 6,000. He's borderline cash for me. And then Brandon Cooks, I feel like, is a nice GPP play with Chris Hogan out, especially on DraftKings. He's only 6,600. Let's keep moving. We're got to cover some tight ends here. Really, the only injury that we're kind of watching is Jordan Reed. Doesn't look like he's going to play again. That's not all that surprising. Let's talk about cash game plays, GPP plays, tight ends. Jeff, tell me who you got at tight end.
I think the debate is at the top of the big guys are Kelce, Ertz, and Gronkowski. Which one you want to use? I think Kelce, we're just trying to ride that train against the Giants to keep scoring touchdowns every week. I agree with you, 10 weeks in a row, 1 and 11 if we go back to last year. That's where I'm leaning. And I think as a short passing game over the middle, Kelce is your guy. I do like Gronkowski. I do like Zach Ertz with the Dallas guy with that Lee out for the game. I think that Evan Ingram's also in play, and then I could rattle down the list. But one name I do want to mention for GPP play, 2 of them really, Tyler Kroft against Denver and CJ Federowicz for Houston. I think that's probably a good place to target. Again, you got to go back to Savage, so it's really a GPP play, but he's dirt cheap. But so is Kroft. I would go Kroft over Fitzgerald, but both are in play for cheap tight ends.
Yeah, and obviously Ertz is more of a FanDuel play since he's on the Sunday night slate, or if you're playing one of those other slates that obviously DraftKings offers. Let me see the Black Eyed Joes here. In cash games, if you like Kelce over Gronkowski, show green. If you like Gronkowski over Kelce in cash games, show me red. Okay, so Ryan is saying Gronk, and the rest of us are saying green for Kelce in cash games. And I don't think we need to dig into it. I was just kind of curious there because both could have great games here. You want to say something, Ryan? What do you got?
Yeah, just real quick. As much as the Giants touchdown versus tight ends is a thing, and it absolutely is a thing, there's no doubt about it, they're actually only 8th in the NFL, 8th fewest in terms of yards per game allowed to tight ends. So touchdowns harder to predict than yards. Yards tend to be more of a trend-setting type of stat. So touchdowns are big, but who scores more touchdowns than Rob Gronkowski? So if we're really doing the touchdown thing, we can go there too. So it's just, if there's ever a time where Gronk is a I guess a solid pivot off of another expensive tight end, maybe it's this week.
Yeah, Gronk does smash. Devin, who do you like at tight end?
For me, I'm not going past Evan Ingram. It's going to be Kelce, Gronkowski, or Ingram. I think that you will be falling behind too much because, especially in GPPs, one of those three will have a monster day, if not all three. The rest of the tight ends are pretty shaky. I think you're hoping for, 8 or 9 points. And we've talked about it. There's not a lot of great options at the receiver top end. We talked about Michael Thomas. We talked about a couple other guys, but there's not that one Antonio Brown on this slate, or Julio Jones hasn't been traditionally Julio Jones. I think in cash games, it is viable to start both Kelce and Gronkowski on DraftKings. Go with two tight ends, one in the flex. Both of them would rate as a top 5 receiver in my projections. So this week. So for me, you're getting a little bit of a discount. I also like Evan Ingram because basically Eli Manning is looking every play at Sterling Shepard or Evan Ingram. That's it. He's taking a sack. Like, those are the 3 options.
So you are covered. Forget it. I'm sacked.
Right. So I talked about the safeties of the Chiefs, and Daniel Sorensen has been absolutely atrocious this year. So I think that this is a week where you just pay up for tight ends.
John, any other tight end thoughts?
I think that Jeff actually hit a lot of the ones I was looking at. The only one I think that hasn't been mentioned, I mentioned earlier in the show, and that's Cameron Brate.
Yeah.
I think he's still in play. He's got he's got touchdown upside. If you look at his game logs, that they would probably surprise most people. He's very consistent at a position that isn't otherwise consistent. And I think the matchup against Miami, looking at it very quickly, if I can find it, and of course I can't on the fly. Oh, they're allowing 34% above league average, using your normalized strength of schedule tool there. So it's a great matchup, and I think he'll go under owned based on the talk that's coming from the chalk that's just above me.
Real quick, is there any concern with his lack of rapport, if you will, with Fitzpatrick? So he only has 2 catches for 19 yards in the last 2 games.
I think that's fair, but the last 2 games have been kind of nightmares too in terms of just the way things have worked out for Tampa Bay. This is a great matchup. It's the best matchup they've had.
Okay. All right, let's move on, guys. We're going to go quickly through defenses and kickers so we have some extra time for stacks. Ryan has a red, Black-Eyed Joe. You have one other tight end. Oh, yeah, you don't want to talk about defenses and kickers. Jeff, why don't you give us your quick 1-minute synopsis on defenses and kickers?
Just start Jaguars and move on.
I think we can debate defenses a little bit. I think there's something to be said there. But kickers, I was looking for cheap options. I want Gostkowski if I can afford him in Mexico. I think that's the guy you want. But if you're looking for a cheaper option, I had to go. Will Lutz is a pivot. I think that's a viable, but I don't think he's as consistent. Nick Novak is the cheap guy I'm looking at. I think the Chargers are a little bit below that 24-point threshold, but home favorite, $4,500. That's the guy I go to if I can't afford Gostkowski. Defense, Jacksonville. I think that's in play. I think you got to talk about the Chargers because they're so cheap, especially on I think on both sites. But on FanDuel, they're almost at rock bottom, and the Chiefs are in play. So I think those are the three teams I'm really looking at. And the Saints, I like the Saints as a GPP option. They may be a little higher owned, but I just don't see that in that game. But the one that really interests me is the Chargers. Will they be chalk or not? I don't know, but I think they could be higher owned just because they're cheap. And if we can't find value, but if we start finding value, I like them even more because they're not going to be there that much. I know, Devin, you love the rookie quarterback who's
I like Peterman,
but okay.
Yeah, I'm on the Chargers defense as well. Although Jacksonville, I think, will score more points. It's hard to ignore the value that the Chargers.
I wish we had something to bet because Peterman won't turn it over twice in this game.
One of you guys can shave your head if you like.
I'm getting close to needing a haircut, but not yet.
Let's move on to stacks, fellas. I'd love to get one stack from each of you. John Lee, who is your stack that you like this week?
Ryan Fitzpatrick to Mike Evans. I think it's well overdue. I've already named why. Last night on the Roto Grinder show with you, I talked about the matchup with Xavier Howard. Since week 6, no cornerback has allowed more touchdowns in the NFL than this second-year player there in Miami. He's targeted every 6.7 snaps, coverage snaps, that is. I think this is a breakout spot for Evans coming off of a short suspension.
Yeah. Devin, who's your favorite stack of the week?
Yeah, favorite stack this week for me is I'm going to go a little bit off the board, and let's go Eli Manning and Evan Ingram. So I think that this game shoots out. I think that this game is one of the highest projected totals of the week. Nobody's going to have Eli Manning because everyone hates him, so that's fine. It saves you money elsewhere. Why not?
Jeff,
something tells me that was Jeff's
all
stack.
the stuff you throw at me for quarterbacks, and I don't even mention Eli, and then you bring him up as like my favorite GPP stack.
Yep.
Jeff, who is your favorite GPP stack?
I'm looking at quarterback running back combinations a lot this week, especially pass catching running backs. So we mentioned Brady and Burkhead earlier, but I think Jared Goff is going to be very low owned, and I think you pair him up with Todd Gurley. I think that's a good stack. It's not going to be that highly owned because they're both kind of expensive, and that game's going to be shooting out but may not get there. Or some people think it won't get there and it'll be low owned. That's my favorite stack. 2 strong players are going to be very low owned. I could use that in a lot of different contests.
Ryan, who's your stack of the week?
Case Keenum, Stephon Diggs, Cooper Kupp. I like that game a lot. Shout out to Devin on all the Cooper Kupp red zone stuff that he brings up both on this show and internally in our staff. He is 3rd in the NFL in red zone targets with 15 behind only Jimmy Graham and I'm mistaken.
Des Bryant, right?
I think it is Des Bryant, who have 17. So I think we've talked about it. I mean, these two teams play at a neutral pace, a very fast neutral situation pace. So it seems like a game where you can stack that you might get some edge. A lot of talk about Keenum potentially losing his job. I mean, for a guy that threw for 304 yards and 4 touchdowns last week, I've never seen a hotter seat. So let's go with Case Keenum and his big playmaker, Steph Diggs, because everyone might be on Adam Thielen after his huge game last week, which was largely matchup driven. So,
and I'm going to throw one out there. This will probably be fairly high owned. Carr and Cooper or Crabtree. Check out the ownership percentage reports that Steve Buzzard puts out, because I think that could influence your decision whether you go with Cooper or Crabtree here. I prefer Cooper because of the high volume of targets he's seen as of late, 39 to 21 that Crabtree has over the last 3 games. But if the ownership skews heavy enough, you might want to go Crabtree here in Mexico. Let's go to parting thoughts. Yeah, I took Spanish in high school.
You boys like Mexico?
Super Troopers.
Nice. Classic. Let's talk about parting thoughts. Jeff Pasquino, give us your wise words of wisdom. For those of you who don't know, Jeff writes it's the FanDuel GPP article, right? The weekly GPP article for FanDuel. So check that out over at footballguys.com/DFS. Jeff, what is your wisdom parting thoughts for us?
It's an interesting week. This is the last week. Well, technically next week we still have a smaller main slate, but this is the last week for buys. It's still, you got a few teams out there that are not playing, but I think it's a tricky cash games this week, but I think the GPPs are much more entertaining. I think there's lots of stacks you can play out there, lots of different ways you can go. Some bigger contests are starting to line up for GPPs towards the end of the season. So I think both types are viable, but again, leave yourself room to pivot. Build lineups on Saturday so that when injury news breaks Sunday morning, you can really make an informed decision and not make rash decisions, which can really shoot you in the foot.
Yeah, that's a great point. Ryan, what are your parting thoughts?
Yeah, Devin hit on it earlier, but if you play on DraftKings, it's a nice 2 tight end week. I mean, so rarely this year have we talked about one expensive tight end, let alone multiple. And this week, feel like we have 3 or 4. And we didn't even talk about, Ben Watson is like 2,700, 2,800, and he gets 7 targets a week. It's low upside, but volume, right? Cheap volume. Cheap volume. I mean, GPP thing, if you just have so many studs you want to try to jam in. But so there's that. And also my own article, Trend Spotting, used to be a DFS article, and now it's both. So I feel the need to bridge the gap here because I'm sure some of our listeners are also traditional season-long players. And this week I touched on Rex Burkhead's usage, which I think is great for all of us in DFS, especially on DraftKings. But Rex Burkhead is going to be a top 15 running back the rest of the way for season-long leagues. So if you can get him in any way you can. He is New England's running back. He's going to let them do whatever they want. So that's the semi-bold but not really bold prediction like I made last week.
So if he's top 15 at 3,600, you play him.
Yeah.
Well, that's more of a rest of season net thing, but yes,
but you get him before the price increases, right?
Agreed. Yes, perfect. Yeah, absolutely. So even if he's 20th this week, he's still priced below 50 or something at DraftKings. So if the guy touches the ball 8 times, he's going to pay off 3,800 in the New England offense.
Only Ryan can take a semi-bold take and then hedge it in the same breath.
Well, but last week when I said Gronk would score 2, you called that unbold. So I was kind of poking back at you for that one, Jeff, which I was wrong. So it wasn't. I guess it was bold, right? Because it didn't happen.
But you'll always have CJ Beathard. John, tell us what your parting thoughts are this week.
So one thing I'll go back to. Just to clarify, the league leader in red zone targets is Devontae Adams with 18.
Not Dez.
Dez Bryant is 5th with 14.
Thank you, John.
And he's tied with Jimmy Graham, if that makes it feel any better. I don't have a whole lot to add. Kudos to those of you who signed up or followed many of us on Twitter last week. I think all 5 of us noted a considerable difference in our following, and I hope that it's paying off for you already.
Don't be afraid to reach out either.
Absolutely, yeah. Reach out on Twitter. Reach out on the message board on YouTube. We're trying to do as much as we can to communicate with everybody that's listening. 2 more plays that weren't discussed earlier. I won't go into a whole lot of detail. Check out my article over the weekend. I'll certainly go into more detail there. But GPP only, I think that Latavius Murray is in play on DraftKings at only $4,000. The Los Angeles Rams are allowing 20% over league average in terms of points allowed to the running back position. And Doug Martin is 4,500 going up against the Miami Dolphins. You're obviously seeing I really like this Buccaneers offense this week. The Dolphins have allowed 28 DraftKings points per game to the running back position over the previous 3 weeks.
Nice. Devin, bring us home on parting thoughts.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is from a GPP standpoint, if you're going to play Brady or Carr, you might as well just stack the entire game because there's going to be people who are doing that. So if one of those quarterbacks goes off, then likely that some of the receivers will go off as well. So I'm just avoiding that game in GPPs, playing it in cash, and hoping that basically it doesn't go above 55 points, which is crazy that it's that high. But that's basically my one GPP strategy for the year. I'm going to stick to cash the rest of the year.
Nice. Well, we have a special week over at Football Guys with our articles. It's the draft live finals in Nashville this week. And so all of our draft DFS content is free this week. So if you haven't tried that out, be sure to check out our content. It's sort of a snake style draft with a DFS flair to it. So give that a shot, and you can find all our content at footballguys.com/DFS. Our Pro Plus package is $34.95 for the entire rest of the season. It includes all of our site content, all of our season long, as well as our DFS stuff. So thank you for hanging out with us for an hour, giving us an hour of your time to discuss DFS. Best of luck this week. And I'm Austin Lee, your host. This is the Power Grid. And on behalf of Jeff Pasquino, Ryan Hester, John Lee, and Devin Knotts, thanks for watching, and thanks for being a football guy. To check out all of our DFS content over at footballguys.com, click on the icon in front of Ryan's face. To subscribe to our Football Guys TV YouTube channel, be sure to click on the button on John's face. And if you'd like to see our latest video, click below me now.